and welcome. In today's video, I'm going to show the new features which I've added. Basically, these were existing feature, but the new feature is the picking up of the items from the shelf. So as well as I'm going to explain and show my code for how all this interaction works, how items gets added to the inventory, and from the inventory, how the inventory is able to pick up the class, which is the store item, how does it get rendered, uh, and as well, how are these all get picked up. So I'll start with the basics, and before that, I'll just show a few more things. So as you can see, I've added one apple, and if I add one more apple, I can pick that up, and that's how it works. So starting with the player, so you will notice player has a few components. So one of them is interaction component. Interaction component is which allows it to interact with the other interactables. I have an inventory component, which is basically the player's inventory. Then I have dialog component. I'm not going to go into dialog component today. And then there is initiate dialog. This is basically the show tooltip. But I'll talk more about interaction and inventory component. Starting with the interaction component. So interaction component is basically gets triggered from players. So if I press E key on my keyboard, which is assigned to my storekeeper character. So if I go to my inputs, set up player inputs. So you'll notice I have assigned few interaction, I have assigned few keyboard keys. So interaction key and is assigned to this interact method. And as soon as I press E key, the interaction function gets triggered. So based on the things I am looking at, it will trigger things. So interaction component will trigger interact, and interaction component also checks has interactable. Uh, this is basically for the tooltip and initiating the dialog. I'll come to this afterwards. And but for now, let's go into interaction component and how does it initiates things. So interact actually checks what is on your screen. So if I'm interacting with an interactable item, what I mean by interactable item is, for example, if I go to store item, so you'll notice store item is implementing an interface called interactable interface, and it is nothing, just this header file and has some methods. So if any item is implementing this interactable interface, so I'm calling, so this is what I'm checking here, is the current interactable is an interactable item, and this is how I'm doing that if it implements this particular interface. And you might be wondering, but how come I'm able to look at those items? I'm doing that with a trace query, and that happens at interaction. I forgot the function name. Traceable, yes. And this is basically keeps running in your tech. Since this is made with C++, the performance is not hampering at all. It runs like smooth as butter. And this is how I'm throwing array, tracing visible items. And I'm doing some math over here. I got all this math from, of course, Unreal Engine forums. But this is how all the whole code looks like. You can pause the video in between and have a look at it. And that's it. So as soon as when I press the interact key, I'm checking if it implements interactable interface, and I'm calling a method on that interactable item. So if that actor is an interactable interface item, I'm calling interact implements. So this is what gets triggered. And if I go to this method, you will notice I am doing all those stuff that uh, like some conditions I'm checking. Uh, this is not a condition, but I need the player because from the player, I'm going to need the inventory component so that I can access the player's inventory. Uh, so store item gets added to the player's inventory. And how does it gets rendered on screen is just a blueprint. So if I go here and show you some interactables, so inventory, so apple, banana, and all this, they are implementing from this interface, which is BP store item parent, which inherits store item class, which I just showed. It also has a highlightable component, which allows me to highlight. I have made things component based, so I can plug and play these things anywhere I want. I have also added this component to the NPC, even to the store shelf. All right, moving on to the store item. When I add this item to the inventory, it goes to the player's inventory. And if I show you how does it go, so now I am doing the trace as soon as I walk near. So trace is able to detect all this. Highlight component is getting kicked in as well. I am rendering the UMG. That's why you are able to see the text. And now I have added this component to my inventory. Inventory component keeps refreshing in between. It doesn't run that fast as a tick, but it has its inbuilt tick function. And if I have to show you, so I'll not go into the UMG now because this is again a complex subject. But now assume that you have added the item to the inventory, because initially when I made things, there was not a visible things. I mean, there were no UI blueprints. So they were just getting added to this inventory component, and inventory component is basically just the data. Okay. And I also have within the inventory component, I have an interesting thing at the top. So this is my F inventory item. Whenever you are picking things up, so whenever I pick that blueprint, which is, let's say, for example, this apple, and whenever I pick this apple, I'm adding things from that apple. So this is, for example, let's say an apple, and I'm getting things from that apple, storing it, and inventory component has an array which gets which keeps things intact. Again, this is that strut, and yeah, so these are all the items where things get stored. This is basically the entire inventory. All right, so now I'll close inventory component. Now coming back to the uh, shelf. So whenever I'm picking things up, basically if I pick a store item such as banana or apple, and now I have to place those on store shelf. Store shelf is pretty interesting. If I show you. So store shelf is a mesh. It can be anything, but it has this slot components which I have placed manually. This is also a component made with C++. So shelf slot component is a shelf slot component C class, and which is added here manually from here, like shelf slot. So this is that component. And whenever I'm adding all these components, if I go to the store shelf, I'm keeping track of all those items. So these are all those slot components, and they get initiated at the top. All right. So initially, these are the only two components. Highlight component, as I mentioned, gives you the ability to highlight a certain component. And whenever I pick an item and when I'm about to place it in the shelf, so within the shelf is also implementing interactable interface. And interactable interface means this has to have a method called interact, and that is what I call. And yes, so this is what gets called. Um, the interactor gets passed to the interact implement. So how does this get passed is when you're interacting with an interactable, it passes you this interactor. Uh, all right. So now this interactor is nothing but the player. So now this storekeeper character. So now we are at the shelf. What do we have to do is the objective is to place things inside the shelf. So I'm getting the inventory component from the player, extracting all the items. I'm not at the moment concerned about which item would go to the shelf. It just player has to select, cause my game is like storekeeper will collect and gather items from other shops or vendors, and he will place all those items into his shelf. And whenever next time customer comes up, he will select things from his shelf and give it to the NPC customers. So that's why I'm getting all the items from the player's inventory, and am trying to add them to the shelf. So player items, I'm getting this F inventory item. This is very interesting item, as I told you, because it has something called the item class, which allows us to render things onto the shelf. Because when I add things to the shelf, I'm just exchanging the data like item type and count, but the way it gets rendered is it needs this blueprint item class. All right, so I'll just show you again that what is it. So this is that class, and it has to be a store item. Yeah. All right, so now it gets added. uh, I'm calling this add item to shelf. If this succeeds, I'm showing all those notifications. Uh, Now, this add item to shelf is again interesting. It does some checking if where this item would get added to which particular slot. Now, store shelf has information about the shelf slot components because they were added to it, and it knows about this slot components during the runtime. All right. So I'm getting that particular class which I mentioned, this item. Uh, why this get default object is basically, you remember whenever you're creating things, or maybe whenever you're adding things to your actor, you're creating this default sub object, and you don't need the class, you need this object, which is I'm not an expert in Unreal Engine, but Unreal Engine initializes things from a certain class and gives you this object. So this is what exactly I'm doing over here. If I've said anything wrong, please correct me in the comments. Now I have this item. It is basically the Apple object, exact real world Apple object with mesh and all that transform. And now you'll notice um, I'm getting the items particular inventory category to see if any slot is tied restricted to a particular category or not. So this is what I'm doing. So priority 1, priority 2, matching the category slot. Existing slots with the same type means if there is any existing apple, the first priority will be given to that. If you already have an apple in your shelf, the another next apple will go to that same slot, and so on. All right. So this is the entire code. This is how it looks. Now the interesting part happens at this add item to shelf. Add item to shelf is going to add item to the shelf's data. So if I go here, I have something called slot components. So within the slot components, if I'm adding the item to a particular slot, uh, then that slot will hold the information about the item count and item class. So if this item class is about apples and the count is 10, then I will have 10 apples. Simple as that. All right. So now going to the add item to the shelf. So yeah, it's some if else condition checking if it is valid or not. I'm checking if I have the correct slot at this particular slot index. Is it correct or not? How did I get this slot index? I got the slot index from this iterator. So this is that index. Yeah. All right. So remember, I'm passing the item class here ahead already. So it has that information now. All right. So I'm adding slot. I'm adding item to this slot. So now the slot has the information about the item class. All right. So this add item will, this is an important function because I'm also adding the item class and the count. This is going to be helpful for us when we are actually going to spawn the item into the world, like render it into the world. Item count gets increased and item class. So why I'm doing all this? Because before rendering, I'm deleting all the instances of that particular item class, and then I'm rendering them with the amount of the item count, and that is all going to happen in the spawn item in slot function. All right. So now in this function, what is happening is the spawn item slot is it is checking again some validation. Is it a valid index? This is a method on the array. So slot component check if this index is not out of range. Then I'm going ahead and trying to find that slot components slot index. This will never be null because we are already checking the slot index is not out of range. So it's just a normal thing. Uh, just an extra thing. So slot index. Now when I'm at the slot, what I'm doing is, that is what I told you, right? I'm destroying all the instances of that particular item. So if my count earlier was 10, I'm destroying all the 10 instances of that apple. All right. So now again, moving to the part where how many things I have to render. I'm taking max display of that. So this property is coming from the current store. I think I should refactor this because this should come from the slot. Let's see, slot has slot max. Yeah, max item count. Yeah, sorry, max item count. All right, so we fixed something during the recording. All right, great. So now items to spawn is will give you a count. We have to get the slots components transform. This transform is basically this because this is just a scene component, and scene component will have things for you. And if I have to show you what is that slot. So this is a uScene component because we need all that transform and location information. All right, so now this is where this is just a normal utility function for printing things on screen. All right, so I'm iterating through all the items. Remember, we deleted all the items in the display view. And now we are going to again render them again with this amount of time. This is a format spiral algorithm, which I got from internet. Yeah, you can search for that as well. And I'm picking the transform. Item transform has this add to translation. I don't know why, but I found this from a tutorial that you have to do this. And then this is an inbuilt method on the F transform. Now I'm actually spawning the item. So this method is delegated to the slot component. Now we are passing the class. The things which is going to be rendered is this class transform and the parent. Why this parent I'm sending, I'll show you afterwards. All right, so now this is how it gets rendered. And that's it. Item instances dot add. Again, I'm adding that rendered item to the slot components array of item instances. All right. Set simulate physics false is here, but I'm again enabling the collision so that I can pick that item from the shelf. Okay, now going back to why I'm passing this parent shelf to this particular instance. So spawned item, we know it is always going to be store item. So what happens is when you're going to pick up that item, you're just calling the interactable method on that store item, right? So basically you're going to call this method, but we are also checking if this particular item has parent shelf. That means this is part of a shelf. Then we are calling this. All right. So what it does is it notifies the parent that something is removed from the shelf. And then we are again doing the rendering stuff. Basically, shelf has to remove that particular item from the shelf. And yeah, that's it. And update shelf display is a handy method so that things gets rendered again. And yeah, that's all. Yeah. And now, sorry for that pause. My son is in the background. And yeah, so this is that method, notify item gets picked up. And that's it. Yeah, that's all from this video. I'll show a few of the function methods again because it was not in this full screen mode. And I'll go slowly so you can copy the code. This is where things, the components which are the, this is actually, I could have named it shelf slot component, but it's okay. This is an inbuilt thing. Add item to with the priority is, remember, this gets called when we press E, and this is how it gets added to the shelf. Remember this item CDO, this is the class, the actual class that we want to spawn. This is the data object, default object. And yeah, add item to the shelf. Priority 2, priority 3. Now let's look at the add item to the shelf again, just for your copying things. And that's it from this video. And, this is the method on the slot component. Alright, I hope you enjoyed this video, and see you next time. The NPC is using the behaviors. All right, and let's pick the items. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Bye bye.